So I want to pick your brain a little bit more about it. So who were like some of the like I wonder if you do know this about. This is pretty much the question. Who are like some of the pedagogy pioneers that you think that helped shape like Texas education and all?
Texas education. I have no clue.
Oh man, it's okay. It's okay.
Music education and education in general. Jean Dalcroze, Carl Orff, the designers of the Dalcroze method and Orff methods, respectively. Kadai. I've always really been into Suzuki as well, Suzuki methodology. Jean Piaget's work in general is just handy to have. Anyone who's going to deal with anyone who is growing or a child, Piaget's work is going to be instrumental in your ability to communicate with them and get the most out of them. And Suzuki, if I decide one big one, Suzuki and maybe Orff. Tied, right?
Yeah, so those are pretty cool things. And from my experience, and so I was curious on your viewpoint about like pedagogy, like on like that musical side. And when I was over at Texas State, we actually had this course called Jazz Pedagogy, and I actually thought that course was just basically about teaching how to teach. I was so wrong about that. Basically, in the course was like the history of jazz pedagogy, even though it was called jazz pedagogy, but we talked about like some of the jazz history. And funny enough, it actually originated from UNT and all about the jazz pedagogy. And I thought it was very interesting that they talked about some of these pioneers of at Texas State, which is funny. So, but I was curious about if you had a viewpoint about like some of those teachers, and you gave like some points like this and some those other people and all. Like I liked what you were saying about the Suzuki and all the other methods you were mentioning, when you were talking and all. So. And let our audience know about these things, and also a little bit of what I was saying about the jazz side. And and I was sharing this article with you too, and you thought this was super weird too. It was and I posted this on Instagram too about this article, and what this article was. It was basically talking about teaching jazz. Like in schools, like do we really need to teach jazz in like a high school or a college? And that's like link to that. And it was super weird and ridiculous that this person, and I told you about this too, that this person actually regrets writing the articles. I'm not going to mention the guy's name because one, I forgot what the guy's name is, and so he kind of regrets writing that. But basically, grateful that he actually wrote it because it's tells you some people's mindsets about jazz, and I think it's still relevant today that some people think that jazz is really not supposed to be in the high school or college level or an actual degree, which I have the jazz degree. And some people think that like it's not legit, that type of stuff. And so I'm pretty sure you might feel this too, that jazz is really technical type of music, and it was pop music back in the day. But we had like more musical freedom with the jazz, and I kind of feel like it's really important to teach jazz because one, they might be a performer, and they might be a performer and they have the ability to play jazz, and jazz is like very, very demanding music. If you can play, and I'm pretty sure you think this too, that if you could play jazz, you could play any type of music, and like metal, jazz, metal, country, rock, and what are your views about teaching jazz? What are some things that you think on that topic is? Do you think jazz should be taught in colleges and high school and all that?
Oh boy. Considering it's kind of our traditional American music, it'd be good, right? Here's what I think jazz is great for. It's great for getting out of sticky spots. When I was writing a lot of rock music, I didn't know much about chords. I didn't know much about progressions, substitutions. I didn't know that there were all these options harmonically. As soon as I got into jazz, boom, my rock stuff opened up, right? Same thing with my line playing. It's like as soon as I started getting into jazz, it's like, oh, these notes are available. I didn't know you could do this kind of thing. And it expounded my knowledge. And here's the contentious point. Jazzers improvise almost always. Yeah, the changes are there, but we're just making it all up as we go. And some people don't think that's a viable, lifelong way to play, right? They think it's better to rehearse a piece of music till you nail it, right, than to always be improvising something. And I can say this about rock. You don't improvise that much in rock.
It's rare. It's super rare.
If you get into a writing stump and you just say, hey guys, let's just jam. Let's just improvise for 10 to 15 minutes and see what comes out of it. If you've experienced jazz, then you have that ability to just be playful and see what happens, you know? And that can sometimes get you out of a sticky spot.
Oh, yeah. There's one group, a rock group actually, that they were making this one song, Waterman, from this group called I think it was Dead Sarah, and I haven't heard this group in a long time. The first one song, 4-5 to Buzz in Houston, and they were actually I was looking up a little bit of the song, and they were actually saying that song was totally improvised. Like they were in the studio making the song, and it was completely improvised. The lyrics, the melody, and everything just tied in together. And that all with improvisation. So let's keep going with the improvisation type of thing, because of our jazz stuff is improvised and the melodies are improvised as well. In my opinion, I think it's pretty much of their ears. The musicality is a little bit of my viewpoint. I'm pretty sure you might think the same way, that musicality nowadays, it just depends. Like artists, musicality is not what it used to be back in the jazz era, where it's such a big topic to talk about musicality, the difference between like what's happening during like Count Basie, Duke Ellington versus nowadays, where there's like rappers making noises and all that type of stuff, where it's like and all that. I was like, wait, I don't understand what you're saying. You're calling the song yoga, and
oh my goodness, that's hilarious.
I know, but I was like, we reached the bottom, guys. Reached the bottom of our musicality. But some people like it, people don't. I'm like one of those people. I'm like, I have no clue. Like that song. I like the background music. I like everything underneath. But when you're introduced to voice, I'm like, shut it off. I'm deleting now. So, but the point is, I was kind of saying a little bit is the musicality is not what it used to be, in my opinion, where the musicians really fought sound, and this is really a hard thing to teach. You have to be there to really experience musicality, and in my opinion, it's really hard to experience that because we weren't born in like the 1900s. We were pretty much born like around the 90s or something like that. So, like for instance, like it's super to see the Count Basie big bands, or on your instance, see like Jazz and Lincolnston. and like just experience like diversity and musicality, and actually musicians use their ears. And that's one of my learning stuff and teaching stuff is like, what was the musician's ear like? And this is the drummers too, because back in the day when stuff was like around 1900 and stuff was getting all boiled together, like drum stuff didn't emerge until 1900, and the guitars, electric guitars too, which Eddie Durham was like one of those pioneers that's helped like the electric guitar a little bit. So I wonder about your viewpoint and all that. Do you think that musicality is like different nowadays? Like just like, what's your viewpoint on all this?
Yes.
Yes, that's a good question. That's a good answer. Yeah.
All right. So yeah, I have a couple thoughts on this. I was listening to Bill Evans talk about how there's kind of a change happening. He felt like back in the early rock and roll days, when rock and roll was coming on the scene and competing with jazz for airtime and winning, and competing for fans and winning, and competing for money and winning. In every way, it was just winning, right? Rock and roll music is much more on the beat. It's much more snapped into a grid than jazz music is, which can rush, it can pull. Same with classical music. It can push, it can pull, it can just pause and then drop in.
Right.
And
rubato,
those phases do happen. People used to like that. I listened to the same Chopin pieces performed by like 8 legendary virtuoso pianists, and they were all performed different. The way they laid down rubato, the speed they took the pieces at, everything about them was different and unique to them. But nowadays, we like things to be much more metronomic. And I think that has a little to do with why rap and hip-hop and stuff is so popular. Because it's predictable. You can turn your ear away from it and the beat's not going to shift on you. The harmonics aren't going to suddenly move into this weird relative minor vibe, you know? You can turn your back on the music and it's not going to surprise you, right? And it's very rare for me to hear a song on the radio that has a tempo change. One of the last ones I can think of was like Live Wire by Motley Crue. In fact, I can't stand the B section. It slows way down. And then it picks back up so that they can do the ending. And bands used to do that. Stairway to Heaven has several different tempo. And they just kind of move. Freebird. You know, by the end of it, they're going, I'm a free bird. And it's just ripping.
Yeah.
By the end of that song. And that made great music great. That made legendary music legendary. The musicality you're talking about. And that has all but been stripped out. And it's kind of a shame. But these things are periods in their trends. You know, just like all throughout history, you've gone between harmonic emphasis and melodic emphasis, right? We've seen complexity and simplicity. You know, we've seen big ensembles, small ensembles. There's all these trends and waves that are happening throughout the timeline of music. And it won't be long until we start heading out of this more metronomic thing into a much more free and rubato vibe. And and we'll see when that is. You know, maybe it's already happening, but we aren't noticing it because it's gradual.
Exactly. Yeah. And there have been trends like, well, yeah, there are trends. I was thinking of something else, but I want to mention about like today's music that To be honest, I haven't. It's super rare for me to hear tempo changes. Like in one of my songs, I put a slight tempo change in my songs, but in pop music or music you hear on radio or TikTok and all this type of stuff, it's super, super rare. And the trend thing we were talking about, you were about, like in jazz, like there's a little bit of a phase for playing the modes, like Dorian. I'm drawing a blank of some famous modal tunes like Impressions, So What, some examples of modal stuff. And there was a little bit of phase. Then there was like a phase of like jazz combining with funk stuff and bossa nova stuff. So there was a lot of phasing stuff. Nowadays in jazz, modern jazz, we are kind of getting like, it's kind of, in my opinion, a blur line a little bit, where modern stuff is, it kind of does sound like it's generated a little bit. They're actually doing it based on the J Dilla feel, which is like a revolutionary type of way of making a drum machine and making it sound humanized. So jazz is doing a really great job in making the music humanized while actually playing like a little bit of a what we call J Dilla feel, which is some stuff I post on Instagram a little bit and TikTok as well, for that type of stuff. So I never thought of trends before until you said it, but it does make a big impact. Like whatever like society is going through now, like COVID, or like I've seen some people make the COVID blues and all that type of stuff. So, but that's pretty interesting about the trending type of stuff. And what were like hits, and there was also a phase of like odd times, and we like literal signatures. And you were also saying before about like you were talking about Bill Evans and the rock and roll music being competitive. I remember one thing about Satin Doll. I'm not sure you probably know about this story. Satin Doll was actually, well, of course, it's from Duke Ellington, but when he wrote it, this was during the time when rock music was getting popular, and some music he was making was not getting into like the top 10 charts. He was barely able to get those hits in because of all the music that was metronomic, getting a little bit more metronomic, like playing with a click track and all that type of stuff. Like that trending type of stuff where they're playing with a click. So with Satin Doll, when he made that, he was like a little. If he wrote it earlier, then it would have been a really great hit, like da 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 da, and all that type of jazz. But if he made it earlier, it would have been a great hit. But he wrote it like during the time when all this rock stuff was happening. So yeah, it was pretty competitive during those times, especially for Satin Doll, Bill Evans, and some of these legendary jazz figures trying to make a living. And so they had to change up a little bit, like Herbie Hancock making that funk stuff. Like I'm not too sure about the whole story about that, but there have been some times that it kind of seems like, okay, we need to adapt to the crowd. And the movie La La Land kind of explained that a little bit. I've only watched a little bit of La La Land, the movie, but it had a really interesting points of the time. The times have changed. They adapt to the crowd and also. But that is a pretty interesting thing that has been going. So what are some like secrets? Like, for example, like there's this quote I remember from I can't remember who the person is. We'll say anonymous, right? But there's this famous quote that I remember is that some teachers, they keep their best secrets to themselves, but they don't give it to their students, and it's a forgotten art form. And it's important to share like some of your like secret weapons because we're not going to be here for long, and we want to be able to teach like our craft. We want to be able to teach our viewpoint on the instrument. So like, what are some things that you think are like some secrets, or what is just your viewpoint on this? This idea
I love it. I love it. That is ripe. And yeah, that is a perfect question, Todd. It is. But
the best for last and all.
Because anyone who's ever tried to get into jazz has probably hit this weird fork in the road, okay? It's like, here's a 2-5-1 in C major, right? So, okay, what do I play over that? Teacher says you use the C major scale. It's like, okay, but what do I play? We'll use the C major scale. Well, the teacher will always say, no, don't just play the scale, use the scale. And the students in this weird land now where it's like, okay, you told me what to play, but it's not just play the scale up and down like an exercise. But what do I play? And the teacher cannot help you with that.
Right.
What to play is up to you, right? You have the ingredients, but what you cook is up to you. And I think the secret, all my teachers were keeping a secret, is that the reason they never told me play this is because in that frustration, you end up going to recordings, listening to Jim Hall. How is Jim Hall playing this? How is he doing this? And you start hunting and you start developing your own sound, your own voice, right? And if my teacher was to just say, play this, I'd be doing classical music. I'd just be reading the ink. And I would never develop myself. And they never told me that, Todd. They never told me, I can't tell you what to play. That's up to you. And that was a frustrating road to go down. But yeah, they can't tell you what to play. They can tell you what scales work, right? But as soon as you say play a C major scale over that, someone's going to play whole tone over it and make it sound beautiful. So even that isn't a rule that's hard and fast. And my teachers never explicitly told me, Brian, you got to figure it out on your own. They just let me toil and struggle, And I'm kind of glad for that.
Absolutely.
Because had they given me too much information, I might just be a copy of them. And that's one thing you don't find in jazz players that are a carbon copy of their teacher. In the classical realm, there's lineages, right? If someone studied with Pepe Romero, I want to study with him, right? Or if somebody studied under Segovia, there's a lineage and a way of teaching down the classical line that you actually will sound a lot like your teacher. Because he's going to craft your technique, craft your rubato feel. He's going to craft the way you approach the music,
Absolutely.
So, yeah, the secret is that there was no secret,
Yeah, and there's like a tip, secret. This is like a little cliche. It's like from quote from Drum Channel, Secrets of the Pros. And that type of thing is like, there's some like exclusive things that some performers actually do think. Like one of the greatest things I actually learned from Butch Miles is that like it was very last lesson, and with him last semester, I was last week of that semester, and the closing thing he like to keep practicing on is like just make your own exercises. Work on your own practice, and that's what's going to get you far is your own practice, because we've been in school a long time, and we should some people are different. Some people it takes going longer to be able to develop their own musicality, their own musical taste, and I felt like that. Well, ever since I've been to college and Jack and States, I'm at a musical level where it's like developing my own exercises, developing my own secrets. And there's another secret. This one's from Ed Soph, and this is just pure genius of him. The thing is that he really didn't have too many drum teachers. He went to UNT, and this is my before going to UNT, he just listened to a bunch of recordings. Like he listened to Baby Dodds, he listened to Max Roach, Philly Joe Jones, and the thing he thought was that these people didn't have a drum. No, single one of them. Well, maybe Philly Joe Jones, but just one or two. But that's pretty much it. And the biggest thing that's, and this is something I mentioned on a podcast, is listening. Whether if it's listening to record, listening to yourself, listening to other performers, which is close to what I just said first thing. But that's like one of the really big secrets, is that listening to recordings. Some people are not able to do that, and I think it just depends on like learning what your learning style is. And that's really important to realize, is what kind of learning style is a person, like especially when you teach somebody. Because once you understand like what learning style is, like if you know that they're a visual person, you probably you listen to the track and then you down for them and to show you visually or show them a live recording. And so I think that was just a very genius thing of itself to like it was one of those greats. And I just listened to recordings and I just mimicked like Max Roach. I just mimicked Baby Dodds because I like the way how they played. And it's like finding this is funny. That's one of my teachers actually said, but it was someone else who said, "Who's your daddy?" and all that. Not the Master of Disguise, who's your daddy, but like who's your musical father figure or mother figure? Because there were some women in jazz. It was like one of your father figures in music, and so for him, it was probably Max Roach or Baby Dodds and maybe Brian Blade nowadays. Yeah, that was just something I had to say about like the secret type of stuff, because people should know some of these secrets, and I kind of feel like sometimes some musicians want to keep these secrets, and they don't show like some of their secret weapons. For example, like Van Halen. Like we were like so crazy about Van Halen's like finger tapping technique. We thought he was like the greatest at the finger tapping type of thing. It's like the eruption solo. And like he didn't want anyone else to know what he was doing, and we knew what he was. Afterwards, we knew what he was doing, and so you were going to play. You're going to do. I knew you were going to do it, sir. But that eruption solo is like one of those iconic things, and for the longest time, no one knew what he was doing. There you go. There you go. Exactly, man. So and this is like an example of hiding your secrets. Exactly. So
very hard to tap on classical, but I'm proud of that.
We got a live demonstration and all that. Not visually, but by audio. That's yeah, and so all that is pretty much like just like tapping, like holding on one note and then just tapping with the other two fingers, like one on the left and then the other on the right.
Yep.
All right, so that's pretty much the secret, guys. You know how he did it, and some people think it actually looks pretty easy. And does that seem pretty easy and all that, or is it just a little bit tricky to do that type of technique?
It's very tricky. Very tricky. Yeah, it's very hard to do, and it wears out your fretting hand very fast. It's like trying to play a snare drum etude, but in the middle of it, you just have to put your right hand in your pocket and continue the same number of notes, the same speed, everything, but no other hand to help you along, right? So this hand's just burning trying to do the taps, you know?
Oh, yeah. And that was like one of the many great secrets in music, is that little thing, like the most iconic, like little solo happened in Van Halen was that eruption solo. And before, no one knew what that was. And so, and now we kind of know what he's doing, but for the longest time we wanted to keep it a secret because he didn't want to take his idea and the next person would become the next great artist, which there were plenty back in those times. But that's what made it him and no one else. So he didn't want anyone else to use that idea in all sense. So there was one thing I was going to ask you. So there was this. All right. So whatever some problems do you think that general musicians have nowadays?
Money, ego, and inconsistency.
We inconsistency, like inconsistency with notes, or
inconsistency in their practice schedule, right? Or inconsistency in their practice aims, right? They might set out to do something and then 2 or 3 days in, they end up getting sidetracked into something else, you know. Or inconsistent with their scheduling and with their ability to show up to gigs and be reliable for gigs, right? Nobody wants to work with someone who says, yeah, I'll be there, but you can't rely on it. And the whole day of you're thinking in the back of your head, maybe they're not going to show up. They have a history of that. That's too much stress to deal with. You know, I'd rather have someone who's half as good as you, but is reliable.
Oh, yeah.
Anytime. Because you can learn how to get better. You know? You can't really learn to be a good person and have respect. Or you might, but I ain't going to teach it to you, right? I'll let life teach you that.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, inconsistency.
And, it's very interesting that people do that, and if it's a high-paying gig, people still do that. Like they're late for the rehearsal because they're sometimes they give themselves the title higher guns, and they think that, oh, I don't know and all that. I already know the tunes, but rehearsal's important and all that. Don't be late. Show up, and we'll still pay you for the rehearsal. And still showing that the ego thing you were mentioning earlier is that they have the ego and they don't show up for the rehearsal, and it has a bad impression, especially in first impression. The first impression says everything about you as a musician, and word spread, and that's not going to be a good thing.
Exactly. People don't know this, but when you're in high school, right, you're around thousands of kids. It's no big deal if you lose one friend or have a bad run-in with someone because there's other kids to play with, other people to deal with. But as you get older, the music community starts to funnel in, right? And it's a very small circle. And everybody knows everybody or has heard everybody before, right? And yeah, if you develop a bad reputation, you almost have to move cities to rebuild that, because everyone who's working in that community will blacklist you and know better than to call you because you're not going to be sober or on time or prepared, or maybe you're sober, maybe you're on time, maybe you're prepared, but you're just a neurotic, grumpy piece of crap and are terrible to be around, right? People overlook that. Music school does not teach you that. They do not teach you how to generally be acceptable to people, right? Goes a long way. goes a long way.
Absolutely. Yeah, and sometimes the teachers do mention that, and like why it is important to show up on time. And I remember this when I was in jazz or at Texas State. They talked about being on time or just being early. If you're a drummer and all that, always be early because of setting up the drums is just takes a long time. And just super important to be early. And it's going to make a good impression on you. It's going to do so many benefits. And plus you get to maybe get some free coffee for anyone else and all that if they have that.
Yeah.
Right. Some coffee. Coffee, man. Crikey. So, but yeah, that's like just one of the biggest things that a lot of people do. And if some people, this is the thing I think too, is that if you're late to class or like just don't show up to class at all, then you might be like that as a performer. That's because it's basically the same thing. Like if you don't show up for a class, then you don't show up for your rehearsal, and the people start to think stuff. You become on the blacklist, and you might have to switch towns or colleges and switch what I call community. Switch the community up. Or like you're not with this community now you're with community, and you're like, better start good now and do anything.
Exactly.
Mess this up.
Keep fucking up. We're gonna demote you all the way down into the reggae community. Okay? So yeah, that's the seventh circle of hell. That's the inner circle of hell where everyone's smoked out of their mind. By the way, it's 4:20 p.m. right now. Everyone's smoked out of their minds, right? And you have to suffer through that. So don't get demoted from the jazz realm into the cover gig realm and then down into the punk and eventually reggae realm. You do not want to be there.
But it was 4:20, guys, actually, when we were recording this. So I think that's why you mentioned that, because it was 4:20 and all that. So, oh my God.
Exactly.
Oh my God. You surprised me there. That's why it was so funny. It was like, oh, and it's 4:22. I was like, wait, what? No. So, oh gosh. But also, were there like any like iconic things? I'm trying to think of a way to phrase this question. Where, like, what were like some signature or iconic things that happened over at SFA that you would like the listeners to know about? Like, what really stuck out with you? Like, it could be a learning thing. It could be like an environmental thing over there.
A lot's happened, right?
Yeah.
I don't know. There has not been anything really noteworthy besides our music building completely flooding during whatever storms were happening about 8-9 months ago. Do you remember that?
I might.
The flooding in Houston and
yes.
The terrible rain or whatever. I forget what that was, but it flooded our school very badly. And we recovered from that. And then we're recovering pretty well from the COVID thing. And so this is probably the most constant thing is the support of the faculty. They love us. They love each other. They work together at gigs. They work together at school. And every time the music building has damages or we have to go to distance, they don't see it as a break. They love to do this. And they're like, oh man, I have to wait to get back in front of my jazz band. You know, I have to wait to get back in front of my class. And they made some really touching videos and circulated those of all the instructors in the program going, hey, it's me from music history. So la, so fa, mi, re, do. You know, I miss it. For real.
That's why it was funny. I'm pretty sure that really happens.
It did. So yeah, that's been a very cool thing. The support of the faculty in placing you in jobs and placing you in gigs and making sure, like I said, when you graduate, you have your own personal library of all the methods materials. They make sure that you know you can contact them for anything, anytime, even after you graduate. They're extremely supportive. And anyone who's taught at the university level, who's probably not in this audience, right? But they all know that when kids leave home and come to university, you're not just a private lesson teacher. You're kind of like a therapist, parent, mentor, you know.
Right.
Suicide
and kind of
hotline.
represent them too, and all of that. It's like for example, like auditions, like when, for example, San Jack, when I was like audition for all these other schools, I kind of represent San Jack, you know. So, and you kind of represent SFA, and so whenever you're done, you transfer, and the teachings you got from SFA, it actually shows off when you're teaching at other schools. There was one thing I wanted to ask you, since it's like it is COVID and all that. So what were some things that actually happened over at SFA when this Corona thing was going on and all?
I will show you.
Okay.
So, along with moving to all online classes, which I don't know if you've ever tried to learn tuba, oboe, flute, euphonium at distance, but it's very hard when you don't have a tuba and you're watching videos. But yeah, I have some good paperwork over here. Here's my oboe scales quiz that I had to write in the fingerings of the oboe, you know?
It's like an alien language right
That's
there.
what happened to me. I ended up distance learning 4 or 5 different instruments. And it hit so abruptly that I was at home, and I'll preface by saying you're not supposed to take the guitar folder out of the school. But I have
evidence right there.
And here's the deal. We were going to play the North Texas Jazz Festival and play some charts from the North Texas program, and I was not going to let spring break just go by without me getting to see this music. Right? Spring break was going to be a great opportunity for me to just shed this jazz band music and get ready for our tour, which was going to be a little over a weekend's worth of gigs with the big band. But I left for spring break, and then they said, don't come back. And so now I still have the jazz band folder, and got some
safe hands, guys.
So that's what happened. Literally right in the middle of the semester, no one saw this coming. I was prepared to go right back, and we all got told, don't come back.
Yeah, I still have some friends over at Texas State, and they didn't see this coming, and they've been like doing this distancing thing at the start of this, and then much later they had to send everybody back home. And some of the people that I knew, they still lived in San Marcos. They're still living over there because it's like it's their community. They're staying there. It's very close to Austin, and I was just very fortunate and grateful that I just graduated in December, and then that's when it was really starting to emerge. It was like January, and then now it's pretty worse in America and all that. I've been seeing that other they're actually a lot better, where the curvature is like way down now, and in America it's like stuff like that. But yeah, that's what I've been hearing with that stuff too, and that's pretty crazy. At least you got that binder in the music that you got to see what's some cool charts y'all were going to play and all.
Oh, so, yeah, and I was going to have them in tip-top shape too.
Yeah, but that tuba stuff, bro. Yeah, so that's pretty crazy. So I think that's all the questions I have so far and all that. Do you have anything else that you want to add for us
Yes, I would
listeners?
love to plug my Facebook page, Wondra, one word, Wondra. Come follow me. Come see my music. I play progressive jazz rock. So you'll see me doing that. You'll see me doing the progressive and the jazz and the rock, plus blends of all of it. So, yeah, tune into that. And thank you for having me.
Yes, absolutely. It's a pleasure, man. And yeah, we got a lot of great stuff from you, education-wise, and things in general too, that decided to emerge in this podcast and all. So, but yeah, thank you so much, man. And for my listeners and all that, I will catch y'all in the next episode with another topic.